Your gift does not have to look like mine, and mine doesn't have to look like yours. And even when they look similar, we're not competitors. Maybe we're collaborators. You know, the kingdom was never meant to be built by one person. Francis Xavier did not create the Society of Jesus alone. He was part of a group, and Ignatius influenced him. Companions stood beside him, translators helped him communicate, local people taught him. Communities continued to work after he left. People whose names history barely remembers made the mission possible. And that matters because we often celebrate one visible person while forgetting the countless people who helped carry the work. No meaningful purpose is completed entirely alone. Someone taught us, someone encouraged us, someone opened a door, someone cared for the children while another person worked, someone translated, someone cleaned, donated, prayed, and some believed in us before we believed in ourselves. Even the strawless calling requires community. The kingdom of God is not a personal brand. It is many hands, many hearts, many gifts, many stories working together. Purpose, it does not require fame. And Francis Xavier became famous after his death. But fame was not the purpose. Service was. That distinction matters because we live in a time when visibility can easily become confused with value. We believe our work only matters if people see it, if the video goes viral, if the business becomes famous, if the audience grows, if our name becomes recognized. But some of the most important work in the world will never trend. A parent breaking a generational pattern, a teacher noticing a struggling child, a friend answering the phone at midnight, a person choosing sobriety again today, a caregiver bathing someone who can no longer care for themselves, a neighbor bringing food after a loss, a person refusing to repeat the cruelty they survived, a stranger offering dignity to someone else that everybody else completely ignored. There may be no audience, no camera, no applause, but heaven does not confuse visibility with importance. Purpose, it's not always about being known. Sometimes it's about making another person feel known. You don't have to cross the whole ocean today. The distance can overwhelm us. We look at the entire ocean and we just decide we can't even begin. I feel like that at the big HEB. We think about everything required to build the business, finish the degree, heal the marriage, recover from the addiction, write the book, change careers, repair our health. And the journey, yeah, it feels impossible, doesn't it? But Saint Francis Xavier, he did not cross the ocean in one step. The ship moved mile by mile, wave by wave, day by day. Purpose rarely begins with a giant leap. It often begins with one faithful action, one phone call, one application, one meeting, one honest conversation, one page, one prayer, one day sober, one boundary, one apology, just 1 hour of practice, one decision to not return to the old pattern. You don't have to cross the whole ocean today. You may only need to untie the boat. Now that you know the truth, that brings us back to the question that has followed us through this entire story. Saint Fidelis, our last saint, asked us, right? Will you stand for the truth? And now here Saint Francis Xavier is visiting us today and asking us, all right, now that you know the truth, what you gonna do with it? Because knowledge alone changes very little. We can know that someone is lonely and never give a care. We can know we have hurt someone and still refuse to apologize. We can know a habit is destroying us and still continue it. And we can know we have a gift and keep hiding it. We can know our words matter and continue using them carelessly. Truth comes before transformation, when it enters our behavior, when knowledge becomes choice, when belief becomes action, and when faith becomes visible. Maybe today's message was not only meant to inspire you, maybe it was meant to move you. One faithful step. You may not know your entire purpose. Most people do not. Purpose often reveals itself while we're moving. And Francis didn't know every place he would travel when he first changed direction in Paris. He didn't know every person he would meet, every language he would struggle to understand, every illness, every disappointment, every door that would open. How about every shore that he would fail to reach? He only knew the next yes. That is often all we're given, not the whole story. The next yes, the next faithful step, the next honest choice, the next act of courage, the next person to serve, the next gift to share, the next boat to untie. I want you to picture today's card one more time. Look again at the different faces. The men, the women, the children, the people standing close, the people watching from a distance, the curiosity, the uncertainty, the hope. And look at those palm trees. The reminder that Francis has entered a world far from the one he knew. Look at that white. A life continually moving toward the light. Sorry, I had to put the light on so you could see better. Look at the gold. The refinement that reveals what is valuable. Look at the cross in his hand. Not a sword, not a crown, not a treasure chest. The cross. A symbol of love that serves, love that sacrifices, love that remains, The artist could have surrounded Francis with riches, power, recognition, symbols of conquest, but instead, the card is filled with people, connection, questions, hope. Maybe that's because Saint Francis Xavier was not ultimately remembered simply because he crossed oceans. He was remembered because he tried to cross the distance between human hearts. And perhaps that's the invitation inside the card. Not how far will you travel, but whose life will be different because you were here. Reflection? I think it's time. Before we close, I want to leave you with a few questions. Not homework, heart work. What comfort have I mistaken for peace? What familiar pattern keeps me tied to the shore? What wilderness might be preparing me instead of punishing me? What temptation keeps calling me away from the person that I want to become? What gift have I hidden because I was afraid I was not enough? Where have I treated another person's gift as competition? Who could I encourage? Who could I collaborate with? Whose world do I need to understand before expecting them to understand mine? What truth do I already know, but have not yet acted upon? What is one faithful step I can take this week? And finally, what boat do I need to untie? Saint Francis Xavier reminds us that an ordinary human life surrendered to an extraordinary purpose can travel further than anyone imagined. Not because the person never felt afraid, not because they understood everything, not because they never made mistakes, not because every effort succeeded, but because they continued saying yes, one decision at a time, one shoreline at a time, one person at a time. Maybe your calling will not take you across an ocean. Maybe it will take you across the street, into a difficult conversation, into a recovery meeting, into a classroom, a hospital, a kitchen, a shelter, a neighborhood, a new career, a new chapter. Maybe it'll take you back toward someone who needs to hear, "I'm sorry," or "I forgive you," or "I believe in you," or "You don't have to carry this alone." You do not have to wait until you are fearless. Courage is never meant the absence of fear. It means choosing what matters, even while fear is still whispering. So this week, look up at the sky. Pay attention to the season you're living in. Notice what keeps returning to your heart. Listen for the question that will not leave you alone. And use the gifts that you've been given. Light another person's candle. Choose collaboration over comparison. Choose peace over temporary relief. Choose truth over the comfortable lie. Choose the next faithful step, even when you cannot yet see the opposite shore. And when you find yourself standing at the edge of something new, do not spend your whole life wondering what may be waiting on the other side. Untie the boat. Thank you for joining me for another Saint Tap. Until next time, may your mind remain curious, may your heart remain open, and may God guide your next step, one faithful choice at a time. May God bless you. May the saints inspire you. And may you have the courage to become the person God created you to be. Because the saints, they do not ask us to become copies of them. They invite us to become more fully ourselves. This chapter has already been written. Yours is still being written. One choice at a time. See you next week.